I am not going to be talking about much today. The point of this is for you guys to talk to us. But quick updates on what we've done since last time we had this session back in Vancouver. The Lava Software Community Project is fully up and running. So I'm assuming people have heard about this before, but I'll quickly skim through. We have a community-led project with plenty of scope for people from lots of other companies and hopefully lots of members to get involved. So we have our own Git repo, all powered by GitLab, which is really awesome. And we are providing our official releases. We have Debian packages, we have Docker images, we have all of the official home for all of our docs is on lavasoftware.org. If you haven't been there, please go and have a look. There's lots of cool stuff. We have had to do some updates on the configuration for Lava to deal with some security updates from Django that came out. Apologies if you've been bitten by this. The allowed hosts thing was a real pain in the ass for everybody. There were config changes around it. If people are still struggling, we can help with this. It shouldn't be too hard, I hope. We've added some new test methods into Lava recently, which I think lots of people are interested in. We explicitly now support doing some limited bootloader testing and recovery of devices in cases where you might have deployed firmware or something and it didn't come up. And a really useful one is interactive testing. So instead of having to provide necessarily a complete set of scripts and things in the Lava overlay, you can in fact now talk directly to the serial port by providing a set of regular expressions. Essentially, you can drive pexpect yourself. Some people have been asking for this for a very long time. Remy did some awesome work, and now it's working. We're hoping to do more on this in the future. We'll come on to that. We have a REST API. Milos did a lot of work on this. So there is now easier access to the test results. We've always had an XML RPC API. People asked for REST as well. Whatever makes life easy for people. This does allow you to export results in TAP13 and JUnit formats, as well as our native Lava logs. I hope it's useful. We've added lots of new device types. This happens all the time. And obviously bug fixes. People like bug fixes. We have some plans for the work we want to do in the next 6 months. We've already started doing a load of work. I'll say Remy has done a load of work on Lava Fed. He'll be talking about that more later in the week. Do you remember? Tomorrow. Lava Fed is an awesome way that you, out in the community, can help us do functional testing of Lava. Again, come to the talk, it's great. Stefan has also already been working on refactoring our authentication code, and here he is. The way that we do ACLs and authorization in Lava at the moment depends on some really old, outdated custom code that we want to move away from. So that's happening. We also have some ideas, and these are ideas only so far, on things that we want to do. We want to make Lava more scalable, as in we want to make it more easy to have an instance with hundreds or even thousands of devices on it. We want to add high availability. If you're going to have that size of lab, you don't want it to be going up and down like a yo-yo when you're doing a server upgrade. We're looking at a container-based workflow. So what does that mean? It means that we're moving more and more of our recommended way of installing Lava and using it at scale into Docker containers. This actually does underpin a lot of these other things. We are looking at refactoring our test shell definitions. Part of the work that has already happened with the bootloader testing and interactive testing will be further expanded with this. And I think there's also a simple one. We have supports for device type aliases at the moment that basically just don't work at all. If anybody is using this, please tell us now, because we're about to throw it all away and come up with something better. And obviously, there's a whole load of more things that I'm sure will happen. Key thing is, what we're doing in Lava, especially with the community project, is we're making all of this more open. Previously, we were doing most of this, the design discussions about this, not necessarily closed as such, but a lot of it was done with internal discussion in Linaro. As we want more people to get involved and contribute, we want to have a wider discussion about things that we want to work on, and we want other people to help with it as well, so dive in. So, having described what we have done and what we're planning on doing, this is your bit. Talk to us. What are we doing well? What are we doing less well? And what are we missing? You talk to us right now. We have microphones. If you need help with configuring your own Lava, or if you've got problems, that's perfectly valid. If you've got comments on what you think we should be doing, so long as they're at least not too rude, that's great. We have public design meetings now every Wednesday. They're linked from the lavasoftware.org website. Please come and join us. And obviously we've got the mailing lists. We have Lava Devel, Lava users, and also if you're running Lava, please be on the Lava Announce mailing list. I should have put it on the slides. If you're not on the Lava Announce list, you won't get release announcements, you won't get the important security updates that we might talk about, that kind of thing. We really recommend it. So, who'd like to start with a comment or question? Deathly silence. Hands up, who's using Lava today? Oh, quite a few people. Are you happy with Lava? Does it do what you want? Oh God, apparently not. So, what are we missing? What should we do? Chase.
Before we release the new package, do we test the upgrade to the new package? I had some problem before when you upgrade into the new one. It breaks the existing instance.
Sorry, it breaks what precisely?
I don't really remember, but I think once the test job cannot be submitted anymore, it returns something saying non-type or non-type that doesn't exist. There's some case missing like that.
Ah, okay.
It was when you were removing a test job, right?
I'm sorry?
You were removing a test job from the database directly.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, this bug has been fixed in one version, but I know there some people had a problem because they were used to do that directly in the database.
Right.
It's not a good idea to do that anymore. You use helpers directly because the state machine will be. If you remove directly inside the database the object, it might break a bit the state machine. If you use Django helpers, it will work perfectly.
Okay.
And to answer a question about do we test upgrade from one release to another,
Yeah.
we do test that we can upgrade from the current release to the next one. We do that every day. It's a CI job that does that.
How do we test it?
We install a fresh install and we upgrade it to the next release, but we don't do anything else. We don't add jobs and test things. It's difficult to do that.
I see. There's another question from, I think it's also Huawei guys, but different department. They actually had a problem to do the upgradation because of the mid package dependency. Maybe the mirror list isn't the correct one. But I don't know, but they have it installed before, but when they upgrade, they hit the mid package dependency issue. It's just another thing.
Okay, an admin package. So one thing that we possibly haven't publicised well enough is that we moved our recommended repositories onto lavasoftware.org, we definitely recommend that anyone who is using Lava, say on Debian Stretch, which is now stable, and updates in Debian are not happening very often, definitely also please pull in the Stretch backports repo that we have alongside that. That will pull in any extra packages that we think you might need to make sure that it all works well. Happy to talk about what you've got in more detail.
Yeah, maybe next time when we hit a similar issue, we can post to the error message.
Yeah, please. I mean, for that kind of thing, if it's a specific upgrade problem or whatever, definitely, you know, details on the mailing list or in IRC are good, and then we can go through it with you and debug the problem directly.
Yeah, thanks.
And it all goes silent again. So, I'll give a little bit of background. I'm going to steal Remy's thunder slightly about LavaFed. One of the things that we have done as we moved over to lavasoftware.org is, well, I said we set up GitLab. The CI is awesome, so we automatically build new packages, new Docker images, everything on every single commit on it, and then we can tag things automatically and releases pop out. It's really great. One thing that we can't do automatically with Lava through that GitLab CI is actually test that Lava itself is functional. That might seem odd, but obviously there's a limit as to what devices we can have attached to that server, and we can't go through and do a full matrix of testing on all the possible devices. So LavaFed is a way that both our labs and other contributors' labs can be used directly on a regular basis to check that we haven't broken support for devices. Again, one of the things that we have found over the last few years is, well, we have a lot of device types in the Linaro lab. Many other people have been contributing device support, and that's awesome. The downside is we can't necessarily test that support for a particular device might have been broken. What we want to do is to get more feedback. Obviously, the earlier in the CI loop we can get feedback about broken things, the better Lava can be. So LavaFed is a way that you can actually share your devices with us, let us test our software on your devices and make sure we've not broken things. Again, come along to the talk and find out more about how it works and why it works, but it's a great way of contributing. So, Maria.
I just have a design question, really. Sometimes when I go in and look at the admin interface of groups in Lava, I see all the group settings, but I do not see the members of the group. Is that something that you could possibly at some point implement? Because you can see the group, if you look at a user, you can see which groups the user is in, but you can't see which users are in the group, which is sometimes convenient.
Okay, yeah, that's an idea. The fun fact is that we are not the one making this part of the admin interface. It's made by Django itself, but we can override it if we want. If that's something that we need, yeah, why not? It's an idea. It's an interesting idea.
But we can extract from the database the members of that group, can't we? So just presenting, if you look at a particular device that's restricted to a group, or a job that's restricted to a group, if you could click on the group and get the list of people in that group, that would be ideal.
Yeah, sure.
Sure, it sounds quite simple to do. Please, submit a request. Yeah, put an issue in our tracker, and that sounds like the kind of thing that we should be able to do really easily.
One of the things that came up in the last hour we had before we came to this meeting is that there's an awful lot of knowledge about how we manage a fairly large lab that is not documented well out there. and they're nothing to do with Lava. They are the things that interact with Lava, report on how well a particular instance is doing, how many infrastructure errors it's experiencing, that sort of thing, and reporting, managing USB hubs when they go AWOL, which they sometimes do. So we are actually actively working on a document to lay all this out, and it will become part of that collaborate page that we were looking at earlier. So it's a lot of that. Yes, we've got quite a lot of experience of doing this, so we just sort of assume people will, that information will get out there by osmosis.
It's easy to think, oh, that's obvious when you've been doing it for a decade, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, why does everybody point out I've been doing this for a decade? It's 9 years. Dan,
it's not a question as much as Could you talk a little bit more about the validation, the job validation stuff that you've added and what it checks now and how to use it and what it's going to check in the future? Because I think that's really useful.
Sure.
The schema validation.
Sure. So one of the issues that we found over the last couple of years is that many of the problems that people are finding with Lava actually come down to the test jobs that are being submitted are actually not valid. But it's very difficult to explain why without something to actually tell you what's wrong. So we've started adding some schema validation, so Lava will actually tell you, or you can find out what it thinks is wrong in your job. There's plenty of mics around.
Mention Lava CLI too, because if anybody isn't using Lava CLI,
yeah,
it's really great.
That as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So the one thing that's important at the moment is that the job validation will not reject your job. It will still try to run it, but you'll get a report of warnings. Oh. Hello? It will not at the moment reject jobs. One of the classic problems that we were going to reject jobs for is where the overall job timeout isn't as long as some of the timeouts within the job and things like that. So the way to think of this is like a Lava lint. It's just giving you a sanity check that it should be reasonable.
So what we want to get through, and this has been a philosophy of Lava for a very long time, is fail early. If there is something in your test job that is actually clearly wrong, we would rather report that immediately rather than maybe go away, wait for a job to be queued, run a test for an hour or two, and then right near the end, fail because you've made a typo in your job definition, that kind of thing. If we can find out up front and tell you that actually some of these definitions you're putting in are meaningless and don't do anything for the job, or like Dave said, or your timeouts are all broken, we want to give that information back. So for now we've added warnings. You can check, you can ask with Lava CLI, our lovely XML RPC based tool, you can ask Lava to check that your job is valid and then hopefully debug it. If you do need any help because it's a struggle and you don't understand what's wrong, please ask us on the Lava users list and we'll help you.
And Lava CLI, I'm in the middle of writing a tool to use Lava CLI to actually look historically back through jobs to say, well, yeah, that one really shouldn't have worked, or possibly didn't work because of X, Y, and Z. And the importance of that tool decreased when we decided not to reject jobs on the basis of things like timeouts, but I'm still intent on getting that working.
So the goal for the schema validator is, so in the next release that we will do, we'll print a warning on when you go to the job page. You will see at the top a warning if the schema is not valid, with some information about how to fix it. Maybe not easy sometimes to understand, so don't hesitate to send a mail to Lava users if you don't find out why. And in the future, not near future, but in the future, when you go to the submit page, if the schema is not valid, it will be refused. But as I'm saying, it's not in the near future, it's in far future. And even further, then if you submit using XML-RPC and if it's invalid, it will be rejected. But as I said, even far further in the future.
So, for my perspective on when you go to submit job on the submit job page, rejecting it there and then on the basis that it's got some errors is, I think, a perfectly legitimate thing to do.
Yeah.
Because it's only for the XML-RPC submission. So because if he goes, well, what are you doing here? Because this actually has no meaning and no function.
Sure. So we agonised for a while over, should we immediately go with a validation of rejecting jobs now? And no, as Dave's shaking his head, we didn't want to suddenly have thousands and thousands of our lovely Lava users complaining that, what's wrong with my job? It worked yesterday, I've upgraded and now nothing runs. So this is why we've started adding the validation. We want to give people time to, to deal with it and actually check their jobs are valid. They will become errors at some point. We may go through a few more rounds of adding more things for the validation and more help, because obviously, the point of this is not just to annoy you and say, no, you're an idiot, you've done it wrong. Obviously, we want to help people to actually generate valid jobs, because that's the whole point.
Just one piece of feedback on what I heard. I don't know that for the use cases that I have in mind, that the XML submission versus the UI submission should be treated any different. Because, for example, a lot of times we will go through we'll have XML submitted jobs and then we'll click resubmit, which then goes through the UI. And that would be annoying if those failed, even though the XML submitted jobs.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that we know that people use to debug is the resubmit. And we don't necessarily, we would like not to have jobs fail that have been successfully working. It's really frustrating. It's like when you get a new compiler version and suddenly all of your nice code that worked fine and was really fast and accurate, suddenly your compiler's telling you it's rubbish and it doesn't want it anymore. It's annoying. It's great when tools give you good, clear diagnostics. It's bad when they just stop.
Maybe you should make the user click to select the stoplights in the picture 40 times in order to submit a bad job.
Oh, maybe.
I would possibly push back a bit on this, because I'd say, okay, you're resubmitting and you've been given warnings about that job. So maybe you should fix those things and possibly then have the option to say, no, submit it anyway. Yeah?
So exactly, that's the thing. I was pushing back in particular. I didn't want to go from no warnings to suddenly these are errors, and that's why we've gone with the soft states for now. In future, there was potentially talk about adding a schema version to test jobs, so you could actually have things validated to say this is valid against, say, schema version 15, but it's not against 16, that kind of thing. It's an idea we've had. We haven't gone any detail on it whatsoever.
I don't want to hog this, but if you have it separated out as warnings and errors, then you're going to run into this over and over as you add more requirements to the linter. This is always going to be a thing. So plan for the long haul of this is a warning for 6 months and then it becomes
absolutely, yes.
There is no time limit at the moment on that, and there shouldn't be. Because what we should be seeing, at least from my guideline, would be 98% of submissions are not showing any warnings before we consider, okay, then we can go and address those 2% more easily.
Sure. So, of course, the admins will see this kind of thing more easily. The problem with going straight from warnings to errors is a lot of automated submissions where things are being templated and there are thousands of jobs being submitted a day, we'd suddenly end up with broken labs and the admins taking all the flack. We don't want that, Admins are our friends, they're nice people.
And we'll also work on some way of reporting the percentage of errors on jobs, of those warnings on jobs, and because 90% of the time, it will be one template that's just slightly wrong.
Knowing that if you look at all the jobs that Lava is running on all instances on the planet, I think more than half of the jobs are just invalid. It doesn't have any impact technically because it's some historical values that were passed in the deploy stage, for instance, that are now just in no and are present in the boot stage, for instance. But if you just activate it right now, they will just fail. Well, technically, it's still working. Just.
I mean, I've been through some of the jobs on LKFT as an example, and we would fail most of them if we.
I check on
So.
We'll fix it.
Yeah. So, anything else to talk about? No. Oh, sorry, one.
So just recently, it occurred to me to have my own Lava lab, but going from idea to implementation is quite a challenge currently. So are you planning on having lavahardware.org at some point? Some recommendations for Lava hardware?
Ooh, so that's a really good question. We've had discussions at a number of Connects over the last few years on how to make hardware better for testing with. And Dave wants to chime in.
So are you talking more about the infrastructure hardware?
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of Lava users, but what about Lava lab owners?
Yeah. It's a very, very good point, and we are putting together a collaboration page about running not just the boards, but the infrastructure for a lab. It's, I would say, probably, well, it'll never be 100% there because there's always something, but we're probably 60 or 70% there now, and we're adding stuff all the time. And so to address that, yes, what are the guidelines for when you're buying a server that has to act as a worker? What are the guidelines for a server that has to act as a master, or one that's a master and a worker? What about the power control, automated power control, USB hubs, you know, all that sort of stuff? All the experience of the last decade, thank you, synthesized. So yeah, we are putting that together. That page is publicly available, I think. Yeah, it's Collaborate. So yeah. So I'll ping you a link. You can have and contributions or suggestions are always welcome. Oh, how do I do this? Oh yeah, we didn't think of that, because you just take it as read that you know how to do it. So.
Could you send a link to Lava users, please?
Yeah. Sure.
And it's something that has come up. We've spent quite a bit of time in the last few years improving the docs for test writers, but the documentation for how to set up a lab, how to go from here is a trivial lab that just runs QEMU devices to actually plugging everything together is, yeah, we know it's not easy. You know, especially when you try to scale up, there's a lot of things, but yeah, we definitely want to get good recommendations for you know, which hardware to use and whatever. We're not quite at the stage of saying, here is a list, go to Amazon and oh, by the way, we'll get a percentage on referrals. No, that would be silly, but we want to help with people with good advice on, based on our own experience on how to set up a lab and how to make it be reliable. We know that's useful, yeah. So.
Recently we have seen issues while downloading the snapshots images onto the Lava lab. It was working well, like I could download the same image from my laptop with a very fast way, but it was not happening on the Lava lab. So I complained that the bandwidth is very high, there is a queue also very high at that particular time, and it's been downloading multiple things. But is there any way, of course there is a mechanism of cache of snapshots. Still there is a lag there. Is there any possibility of improving the download speed of the images, because it's almost 250 MB and it's multiple of 100 devices.
So is this in your own lab?
No,
Or is
this is a problem with the Lava lab instance of LKFT.
Oh, okay, in the central one. So, in fact, I'll let Dave talk about that more because it's his central.
Email, not listening to questions. Sorry, Naresh. What was the question?
Your plans of improving the downloading of snapshots images onto the devices, dispatcher and flashing it.
Yeah, that's so we currently have a 100 megabit line in the lab. We are in mid-May, that will go up to 1 gigabit. It's been delayed because of technical problems with our ISP or one of their subcontractors, but that doesn't matter. We're going up to 1 gig. There's also the issue of snapshots itself is sometimes overloaded. and if, as long as you're using HTTP and not HTTPS, we can cache it, but otherwise we just have to go and get it every time. So it's, we're aware of the problem, and we're doing everything we can to at least mitigate from the lab's perspective how we manage it. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll ask another one about caching that I'm curious about. Someone told me that a long time ago, Lava used to implement caching itself, and I wonder if that's true and if that's ever been readdressed, because it seems like if Lava managed the caching through some service, that it could cache anything much more granularly than the very complex way you have to do it with Squid and the constraints of not being able to do HTTPS very easily and things like that.
If I remember correctly, yes, we did, but we are going back several years, and it was all V1. It didn't make sense to be maintaining a caching mechanism when you can, you know, set up an infrastructure that does your caching for you.
Yeah, but surely one exists that Lava could just use, and when it sees a URL, it could read.
We do. We use Squid, don't we?
Squid, but that's
Also.
inline, so that's an inline proxy. I'm saying that Lava itself could check like a cache service locally. Do you have this file? And if it doesn't, then ask it to download it and save it. In other words, if all it would have to do is like take the URL and send it to a service on the network and have that service give you the file, and then that service could.
I guess we could, but yeah, I mean, at some point that would just be replacing what Squid's already doing, surely.
Poorly.
Well, no, because what happens is you send a request to Squid, and it goes, yes, I've got that one.
If it's HTTP, and if the redirects and stuff like that are properly set up in Squid, yeah, like theoretically Squid works. In reality, Squid doesn't cache everything, and it's really easy to miss.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, absolutely. It's something that could be possible. I think, the reason we're pushing back is we don't want to be maintaining essentially our own Squid equivalent.
And you've got the other problem is people send some of the links that they're giving us have /latest at the end, so we'll just give you the old one. It's not as simple as just implementing a.
Yeah. So I think that's what it comes down to, is we'd rather trust something like Squid. It doesn't always get it right, it doesn't always cache everything, but there's a reason why, you know, this isn't as simple as just, you know, checking on a URL and giving back the same content. You know, there's a lot more to it than that.
It's something, maybe we can look at other caching technologies that we could utilise other than Squid, but I think implementing something ourselves. Thank you. That's very good.
Thank you.
Matt, did you want to say something?
No, I was just thinking if one doesn't exist, I wouldn't write one.
Well, there is that.
We are, as I said,
15 minutes over.
no, we got to 4:55. Yeah. Please dive in if you have anything more you'd like to talk about. Otherwise, I'll probably just wibble at a microphone, and you won't like that. So definitely, we're always open. We want more contributors to get involved in Lava. This is why we've opened up our design discussions regularly. It's why we're trying to discuss things on the Lava Devel mailing list. Are there other things that people might like us to talk about that, you know, or think about, you know, future design directions for Lava? We're looking at things that will help people with larger labs deal with performance and availability issues, because that's what a couple of our members are keen on. If there are anything else, is there anything else that people would like that would help them maintain their lab, or, you know, or maintain their test infrastructure, or anything that we can talk about? Right, Matt's waving.
Yeah, this is pretty specific for our needs we've just thought about. We would like a way of per user stopping people flashing the recovery on Junos.
Has somebody been causing problems?
No, we don't want to bother doing it anymore, but we want to stop other people doing it as well. In, say, like the LKFT lab, we want to run jobs, not bother flashing the recovery because it takes so long. But at the same time, we want to say, this user, he can flash recovery for in case we want to do it. So it's like, basically, it's a section of the job template. We can say, only certain users can do this thing. Yeah, and that was pretty much targeted at Remy, so I'm interested for this.
Okay, interesting question. Absolutely, that's doable. Question is how long it will take to do that? That's a good question. I haven't thought about that, but it's perfectly doable, yes.
But you've also got the problem that you now don't know what firmware is on the device.
Yeah, so yeah, thought about that. Basically, we're just going to stick one on it and say,
If it's allocated to you.
yeah, exactly.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got you.
So the fun thing in that is, how would you describe it in the device config or similar in the lab? Okay, you do.
The same way you do it for all the devices that don't support recovery.
Yeah, so the thing is, I could remove it from the template, right? From the device abilities, and
Sure,
then no
that's
one can do
probably
it.
easiest.
Yeah, but then no one can do it. And then if we decide, hey, we need to,
So is this just specifically just for firmware recovery, or would we want to make this a more generic thing for all kinds of potential features
would
in
say-
the test job?
I would
This
say,
is
yeah.
what I'm worrying about.
it would be a cool feature to be able to be per user which actions you can run on devices.
Yes, it would.
Because
Patch is welcome.
Yeah.
Because if it's only for recovery, a quick hack will be to have 2 different device types for the same device. And as you will know what you are doing, so one will be for every user, in which recovery is not defined, so they can't use it. And for yourself, you will have one device type, which is technically the same device. So if you run jobs for both at the same time, it will not work, obviously. It's really hacky.
Yeah.
And in
Oh,
which,
so that
for
really
your
is.
device types, you will have recovery activated.
Yeah, I mean,
If it's only for recovery, that's quite quickly doable.
yeah, we can do it as it is now because I can just go add the recovery section to the device config, run the jobs I want to do, and then remove it again. It was just a pondering about like generic actions allowable per user.
And again, so do you want that then per specific users, or would you want to make it an admin-only action or something? Would that be reasonable?
All of the above? I don't know.
You're more of an ideas bear, aren't you?
We're just thinking here, but if you could define a recovery job type, kind of like there's a health check job type, and it had a version or something, then you could submit a regular job and say this job requires firmware version XYZ, and there's an associated, and like it kept state of the device on which version it was on, and then it had a.
Technically, an health check is like any other job. There is nothing specific about it. So
No, I understand, but it has
no, just to
certain.
clarify, yeah, it's just a normal job. So
It's a normal job, but it's a job that Lava knows about, and so you could give it a recovery job that Lava knows about that it could run.
So it's something that we've pushed back on for a very long time, is about having device state, because of that, anything that you can have persistent on a device is something that then breaks future jobs. Obviously, in this case, you're trying to undo breakage, but it's a difficult thing to manage.
But if you had a recovery job, you would have to be able to take parameters, because you want to upgrade the firmware, not
You
just
could
to.
have like a version 2 recovery job and a version 3 recovery job, and then when you submitted your job, you'd
Yeah, but the firmware changes quite regularly, so that doesn't seem.
I don't have anything else to say. It was just a thought.
I mean, by all means, this is the kind of thing that might be worth talking about on the devel list, and and kicking around a bit and see if we can come up with something. As it is, it's not an easy one. It is. It is very edge case. If there were patches that would implement it and look sensible, then yes, we might take it on.
Can you not do it in the device specific thing. So you say, in the device type, disable it. No. Not device type, no. Oh. Okay, that needs thinking. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it might be nice to define that the certain actions on certain devices are only allowed by certain users. That's a combinatorial nightmare, is my only worry.
It's from an admin point of view, I'm just going, bah!
I'm just thinking about it. When we render the device type, so which will give the device configuration that you will run. If we give the current user to the Jinja renderer, we will be able to check that if it's an admin or not. We can include or not some part of the device type. That might be working. Yeah.
Oh, maybe. That's a thought. We'll have to
just
talk about
ideas.
this. So yeah, by all means, bring it up on the list, Matt, and we can think about it more. Anyway, I think it's now 5 to 5, so we're reaching the end of the session. If we have any more last question, but we'll have to be quick. No, I guess that's everything. Thanks, folks. Again, find us online on IRC mailing list or whatever. We're here to help. And if you have any ideas about other things we can do to make Lava better, please dive in. Thanks.